Welcome to the Talking Tavern. Today I'm joined by Chun. He is a software developer, and you may know him as the DM of the Dungeons and Dragons Infinity Tower live stream show as part of the Time to Tabletop network. He's a well-respected member of the online RPG community, and Hans runs 3 blogs where he discusses different aspects of fantasy gaming. Hans, thank you for joining us in the tavern.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I really need to make that just one blog one of these days. I just don't do that. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's a lot to manage.
It's not even that bad, but I worry about crossing the streams, getting things mixed up, and I probably would do better with just one blog. But I haven't brought myself to that yet.
Do you think that's maybe the software developer in you, that you're trying to separate components and
I mean, that makes good sense. I was thinking the Infinity Tower kind of needs to stay its own thing, so I kept it alone. And then I started doing a lot of Open Legends stuff, and I like to keep all that compartmentalized so that it's easy for people to read.
Yeah.
And then I have now etc.
I like that. Well, let's go back in time a little bit. How did this all start? What got you into RPGs in the first place?
The Boy Scouts. I was a Boy Scout at age, 13 or 14. And it was a really great group. Everybody was fun. And when we did camping trips or, different activities, it always ended up being Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, cool.
So that was kind of neat. And it just kept rolling with it.
And what games and systems have you played over the years, primarily?
Yeah, that's a large set of things. So I started gaming back in '93 then, and that was all AD&D 2nd Edition. And then after I did less Boy Scouts and more stuff on my own, then I had a lot of friends who wanted to play Vampire and the other White Wolf games. So we did that. That was really kind of cutting edge at the time. And I have picked up a lot of different games over the years and tried to run them, but a lot of them just kind of sat on the shelf.
Yeah.
Did a lot of 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons that went into 3.5, and then stopped cold turkey from 2007 to almost 2015, just with, life, family, stuff like that. Yeah, and then, it wasn't in the way, it just didn't match with what I was trying to do, trying to get a whole bunch of people together. And at the time, I met my wife, we got married, we, got a house, all that stuff, but she wasn't interested in gaming and RPGs. So we did a lot of board games, video games, but we weren't doing RPGs. And then we had some friends in mutual that just said, hey, we should play a game, and this is about the time, I got to give credit to the 5th edition starter set. The new Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition starter set got me back into gaming, and it was also right about the time that I realized that Critical Role existed, and that helped to kind of kick me in the butt and get me more interested in being a better storyteller again. And so all those things together, started playing D&D again.
Okay, and I'm presuming that eventually somehow that kind of ended up turning into your involvement with Time to Tabletop and the Infinity Tower campaign. How did that come about from that spark?
So everybody who has friends and tries to play a role-playing game, the worst part is trying to actually get everybody together to play a role-playing game. That's the worst part. Doesn't matter what your format is. So we tried that. It worked out okay. We had friends that would come over. We played a couple sessions. They went very poorly. The majority of the time was spent trying to get people to actually play the game, and it wasn't jiving. So I was kind of feeling like I wasn't getting what I was hoping to out of gaming, and my wife is very patient, thank you. So with all that, I looked online, and I was trying to find different groups I could play Dungeons & Dragons with. And Facebook, I don't really like very much. I looked on Meetup. So we have meetup.com. I hope it's around everywhere. If it's not, it works really well in my area.
Yeah.
And yeah, great. So for me, my experience was got on Meetup, found a group that was doing D&D in the area. They had a game planned that Saturday, and it was like an open event. There were going to be several games. And I said, hey, I want to come to your session, and I want to run a game. And they said, cool. And then I went to the session, I ran the game, there were some people there, it went okay. I did that for several months in a row, went to a lot of their events and ran games. The person who got me started in that is my partner in Time to Tabletop, the guy who actually does all the hard work, who is Scooter Hamilton, Disco Preacher on Twitter. So with that, he got everything going, and he was doing this D&D meetup. We got to the point where we were so big, we were doing an event every weekend and sometimes 2 or 3 a week. And with that, the people who were running our current meetup weren't really happy with that schedule. They wanted fewer events. And I mean, go figure, right? So we said, let's start our own meetup, and we just made a lot more events. And that was going really well. And then I turned to him one day while we were walking out of an event. I said, have you ever thought about doing a Twitch stream? And he said, that's all I ever think about. And so I said, well, we should just start doing that. And so we got some equipment together, and he said, well, yeah, maybe we could do something like 6 months. We start planning, we start getting stuff together. And I said, how about next weekend? How about we just do this right away? I've got this camera, it's terrible. You've got a computer, it's going to go okay. Let's just shoot the thing. And he auditioned some players, and we just shot the thing.
Oh, cool.
So that's how we did Time to Tabletop and Infinity Tower.
Nice. And the meetup group that you started, is that still going, or has that had to...
Yeah, I was actually there on Saturday. I was there just yesterday doing a meetup. So we had 25 people there playing D&D and Numenera, and we had a guy bring in an old box set of Paranoia. We had lots of stuff going on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about the actual campaign itself, the Infinity Tower campaign. Some of the players and what's been going on in that world.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. That's like my favorite thing, and I love our players. So Infinity Tower is a 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Everybody is at level 6, getting close to level 7. It's set in a world where there's been some conflict, and things are like constantly being... There's this tear between the military and the civilians, and the players don't really want to be controlled. They don't want to be told what to do, but they realize that there's these threats that they're trying to encounter as well. We have great players. We've got a human cleric who is my very good friend. I've known him forever, since high school, my best friend. We've got a Tabaxi monk, and that's our player Kat, who also runs the Adrenochrome brand on Time to Tabletop. She's very creative. She keeps me on my toes. We've got Sean, who publishes a lot of stuff on DM's Guild, and he's playing a gnome gunslinger. And then we've got Allison, who's a longtime Adventures League DM, and she's playing a tiefling sorcerer. So all top-notch players, they all know the rules better than me, keep me on my toes all the time.
And a good mix of characters and classes there as well.
I think so. I think they do great. They're really exciting, and yeah, it's a fun game, and I'm really happy to say I've only made up like a portion of what's going on in it, and a lot of like the direction, the story, and the drive comes from the players.
Mm-hmm. And I think is it about episode 86 or something that you're up to now? Or?
I wish. We're not quite that far along. We did 30 last week.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
If we do 86 soon, I mean, that would be cool. But yeah, 30 is good for us.
That's something to aim for, I guess.
Yeah, we've been shooting since December of last year, and I think we've only taken 2 breaks the entire time.
Oh wow! So you're definitely very good at the consistency then, which it can be the death of a game if you miss out on that.
It really can, and I mean I'm like so grateful because the players, Scooter, running all the board and putting all the things together to make it happen. I mean I basically show up and run a game, and then they do all the work in between.
Okay, so how much prep do you actually do for your games?
Oh, I mean I'm on video now, so I'm gonna have to admit that I probably do like an hour's prep per week.
And has that always been the case, or is that something you've kind of trained yourself to cut it down and not get too dragged into the over planning, which is something a lot of people suffer from?
Yeah, when I first started running this campaign, I used to take like a lot of walks around the building at work and things like that, and just try to like figure out where I wanted to be with things. But I think a lot of it was trying to figure out the balance between being challenging to like first and second level characters, and also like how to incorporate player ideas. I think I was struggling a lot to say yes to things and try to like figure out a reason for them. And I don't know, I think some of the best times are just when I say, yeah, just do that. It just seems better when I just say, go for it. It's going to work out okay.
Mm. And presumably a lot of the initial, if it's your own world and you kind of plan for everything, then you've got that initial design stage. And then after that, I think things tend to flow a little easier when it's your own world.
Yeah, it was really interesting. We did a session 0 for this game, and the original concept was there's a magical artifact called the Infinity Tower. It's going to be able to take you places and so forth. It's kind of a Doctor Who ripoff. But you're not going to know... We didn't set anything else up. So we just had a place we were starting the game. The original episode didn't even start in the player's world. They weren't in their spot. They were actually in the middle of a future adventure. Right. So... with all that going, I told them, you guys make up what you want. And the characters framed the idea of there being a conflict. They told me the major villains were orcs. They said what they didn't like. And then because of the fact that we had 2 players that couldn't make it to the first part of session 0, we were already off to a great start. We had 2 out of 4 players for our session 0, and we were filming. So then we had 0.5, and then, or 1, or whatever we called it. But we had the second session 0, and we had 2 other players, and they had watched the first session. and they said, oh yeah, and this happened, and this happened, and these people aren't like these people. And before you knew it, we had all these different dynamics going on that were just, they weren't something that was planned by me, but they were planned by the players.
And that's great. That's kind of like a cross collaborative development of the game, isn't it? Which I think is something which is key to having a really rich game that isn't just, you know, the DM's foregone conclusion of what's happening. And
right. I think that's one of those fun things nowadays, right? You get a game, especially modern game design, they kind of expect that the players get to say some things and make some things happen, and I think that's a lot more interesting.